Good morning. And as the saying goes on Mean Girls, it's Wednesday and we wear pink. You know that. You know that. Well, when I'm talking about pink this morning, I'm talking about propaganda pink. And, listen, pink is one of my favorite colors, but we don't need the propaganda attached to it. So on today's show, it is a big show. The first thing I want to talk about is the worst of the worst. Donald Trump, who engaged in this very expensive, very dangerous, and unlawful bombing campaign against Iran, is now having to lie about the failure, right? There is now a report, an official report that has leaked, that has been corroborated by several news organizations, indicating that in fact, they have only, through this bombing, set back the Iranian nuclear program by maybe a few months, despite Donald Trump claiming that site at Fordo had been obliterated. That is not what the evidence says at all. And so what we're going to first deal with is lying, because the only thing that is going to get Donald Trump through this presidency is repeating the lies and having his supporters believe them, and having Congress pretend like they don't know the truth. So we are not going to take part in the lie. That's first. Then second, we have some amazing news. There is a new hope. Yesterday, I briefly spoke about the Democratic primary in New York, and the result has been extraordinary. So we will cover that. And then, of course, we will have Crazy Town. So let's start with Donald Trump lying about this report. So let's listen first to Rep. Michael McCall talking with Cassie Hunt about how Donald Trump claimed a few days ago, when he unlawfully struck Iran, right? Several nuclear sites with very heavy and very expensive bombs, immediately said it was successful and we obliterated Fordo. And now people who are standing up for Trump are being questioned. So let's play that. Here we go.
This report said it was wrong. I'm interested to know your reaction to this, considering that President Trump has repeatedly said that the program was, quote, completely obliterated.
Well, it's unfortunate that intelligence gets leaked so quickly in this administration. I understand the president's frustration. Having said that, it did cause significant damage. And I think that's important in terms of a time to negotiate a peaceful resolution. However, and I've been briefed on this plan in the past, it was never to completely destroy these three facilities, but rather cause significant damage. But it was always known to be a temporary setback where they could then rebuild the centrifuges. I think right now the key is to keep applying the pressure, the leverage.
So why do you think the president is saying what he's saying in public, if that's the case?
Well, because it did cause significant damage. And he had 12, 30,000-pound bombs being dropped. It's all a matter of semantics. I think the president, thinking it completely obliterated. Look, it caused significant damage.
What? I mean, this is like Kellyanne Conway talking about alternative facts. The words completely obliterated, which means completely destroyed, right? He is claiming that is the same thing as significant damage. When Cassie Hunt pushed back on Rep. McCall, he just says it's a matter of semantics. Okay, words. What do they mean? You tell me, did you ask Michael before you decided to buy a motorcycle? And I said, I completely disclosed. that sounds like I completely told him. Absolutely. He knew everything. And then it turns out Michael said I had no idea she was buying a motorcycle. And let's say I told him I'm going to go out and buy something. And I say, well, I significantly disclosed a purchase. It's just a matter of semantics, whether I told the truth. I mean, come on, guys. So there's more. Like I said, on Wednesdays, we wear pink. Why was I referring to that? You know, it's because Tammy Bruce at a press conference yesterday, I couldn't help but notice how much she resembled the Pink Lady, the famous Korean anchor who used to appear on television, North Korean anchor, who's now replaced with a younger model, not Tammy Bruce, but someone else who would appear on Korean television, just giving North Korean television, just giving Kim Jong-un's talking points, right? And I mean, I know that you have seen her. So I want to, and I know that we have maybe in the past shared what she looked like, but I want to show you what I'm talking about. The lady always wore pink. And I think that if I share this with you, she often wore a pink suit, but always something pink. And in the US, we mock that as being sort of drinking the Kool-Aid, as a sort of dear leader support of a authoritarian leader, that no matter what the leader says or does, you provide the spin that they want. If they tripped and fell down, you say that is not true. It was a choreographed moment, or you just say it never happened. Fake news. And that comes from authoritarian regimes, including the one in which we live. So I am going to share with you a screen so we can take a look at this woman in pink right now. Let's play this. So you can see her name is Ri Chung-hee. She's a famous North Korean news presenter. And this is when she was announcing when the Democratic Republic of, when the North Korean government was doing their nuclear testing, right? And the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, I should call it more accurately. So you can really see what she looks like right there. And so when I said that at one point, I've said who wore it better, did Tammy Bruce or Ri Chung-hee wear it better? What I'm obviously doing is mocking the way in which the Trump administration, in this case, it's not a newscaster, right? Tammy Bruce is no longer on Fox News. She's moved over to be a spokesperson for the State Department, but how much she will just mouth whatever the president says on True Social, whatever he thinks. And she's gotten to the point of not saying anything because at any given point, Donald Trump will change his mind. She just simply says that she agrees with anything. Now, I have also, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, called this propaganda pink, or on Wednesdays, we wear pink. I'll get to that in a moment. Let's look now. I mean, here you see Ri Chung-hee in her pink suit with a white, little white shirt or white scarf underneath. Let's take a look at Tammy Bruce yesterday.
It was my great honor to destroy all nuclear facilities to stop the war. As far as we know, the bomb damage assessment has not been done. The Joint Chiefs Chairman was talking about how long it might take. Do we have something more conclusive about destroying all of the nuclear facilities?
Well, a conclusive comment for me would be coming from the President of the United States. I have great admiration for you, Andrea Mitchell, but I think he might know more than you do at this point, more than I, more than any one of us here. At the same time, obviously, the information that we receive, that the American people receive, which will be public, will take some time. But President Trump has indicated his pleasure at the success of that raid, which obviously was very limited in scope. And that's a very good point, I think, at when it comes to the nature of what's occurred. And I'm pleased that the president is pleased.
I'm pleased that the president is pleased. So she is also dodging the intelligence reports that came right out of the Department of Defense indicating that there was significant damage, but far from completely obliterated. Now let's talk about Mean Girls. I just feel like sharing that clip with you. So here we go. On Wednesdays we were pink. Mean Girls, fabulous, fabulous film. I think the president is a mean girl. So let's take a look at that. A clip from Mean Girls. On Wednesdays, we wear pink. Let's go.
Okay, you should just know that we don't do this a lot, so this is like a really huge deal. We want to invite you to have lunch with us every day for the rest of the week. Oh, it's okay. Coolness. So we'll see you tomorrow. On Wednesdays, we wear pink.
You got it. On Wednesdays, we wear pink. So, yeah. What I love about that, although today is Wednesday, yesterday was Tuesday, but today, on Wednesday, we're talking pink propaganda. So, guys, it is pink propaganda. It is North Korea stuff. Donald Trump has gone over the edge. He has been this way forever. The man cannot truly, I believe, distinguish reality from his fantasies of what is and should be. I really think he believed that he could just announce that there was a ceasefire and that there would be one. Now, in fairness, I want to report accurately. As far as I know, at the moment, there is no firing. There is no missiles being sent to, no barrage of missiles being sent from Iran to Israel at the moment. And as far as I know, Israel is not sending fire in the other direction. That said, when Donald Trump announced a ceasefire, it had not been agreed to. We know that both because Israel had not agreed at that time, and neither had Iran. We saw them exchange fire even in the middle of the night 2 nights ago. It hadn't occurred. So he lied about that, but now he's moved on to a new lie, right? Because now there is all quiet in this particular war. Of course, Israel is still fighting with Gaza, right? We know that. So Donald Trump is now focused on trying to claim victory, right? He wanted the Nobel Peace Prize, but he probably won't get that because he said these people in Iran and Israel don't know what the F they're doing. But Donald Trump's supporters still want him to get that. He was on the news even yesterday saying, I deserve it, right? Okay, so let's listen to Donald Trump this very morning, just about an hour ago. He is right now in the Netherlands at a NATO conference. And to give you some background before I give you this clip of more of his lies or his sort of backing off of it, this was him last night. He's really angry about the leaked news report. So this is what he wrote on Truth Social. Fake news, CNN, together with the failing New York Times, have teamed up in an attempt to demean one of the most successful military strikes in history. The nuclear sites in Iran are completely destroyed. Both the Times and CNN are getting slammed by the public. No. I don't think the New York Times and CNN are being slammed by the public. I think that Donald Trump cannot face the reality that we know the truth, that Donald Trump may try to claim, and that this was complete obliteration. And it's just not. It's just not. And I think this is the same thing. And I'm gonna here we go. I'm gonna share this. There was 17 hours ago, so this is when the report came out that the site I'm just gonna go to this for you. I'm gonna share this with you so I can show my sources because I got two different things. Before I share a little bit more, I'm going to show you the video of Donald Trump from this morning, but I need to give you more context. So I'm going to share this screen from the New York Times. Okay. Strikes set back Iran's nuclear program by only a few months. U.S. report says preliminary classified findings indicate that the attack sealed off the entrance to 2 facilities, but did not collapse their underground buildings. Okay. And we have a lot of journalists on this. Okay. We've got Julian Barnes, Helene Cooper, Eric Schmidt, Ronan Bergman, and Maggie Haberman, and Jonathan Swan. 6 heavy hitters. And this came out yesterday. Okay. A preliminary classified U.S. report says the American bombing of 3 nuclear sites in Iran set back the country's nuclear program by only a few months, according to officials familiar with the findings. The strike sealed off the entrances to 2 of the facilities, but did not collapse their underground buildings, the officials said. The early findings concluded. And let's give it a little more context. The article goes on to say, before the attack, U.S. intelligence agencies had said that if Iran tried to rush to making a bomb, it would take about 3 months. After the U.S. bombing run and days of attacks by the Israeli Air Force, the report by the Defense Intelligence Agency estimated that the program had been delayed by less than 6 months. The report also said that much of Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium was moved before the strikes, which destroyed little of the nuclear material. Iran may have moved some of that to secret locations. Of course they did. Okay, so that is, I was supposed to be sharing that with you, and I want to share one more thing with you here. So that was one story from the New York Times. We have an updated one about the Intel report and how Donald Trump is a little, let's put it mildly, upset that he doesn't get to engage in a victory lap at NATO. So let me share that for you. This is the other one I want to share. Okay. So here we have this other article, the follow-up piece, Intel report on Iran upends victory lap Trump was hoping for at NATO. President Trump had been eager to celebrate the U.S. strikes on Iran, but a new report indicates the attacks set back Iran's nuclear program by only a few months. And here you see a picture of honor guards rolling out a red carpet in front of Trump's limo as he arrives at a royal palace in The Hague. Okay. So this piece, as President Trump landed in the Netherlands on Tuesday, that was obviously yesterday, for the annual meeting of NATO allies, he was desperate to hold together the fragile ceasefire between Israel and Iran, cursing and cajoling to make sure that history would remember him for bombing Iran's nuclear sites over the weekend and brokering a peace deal days later. But just hours after he landed, the leak of a new U.S. intelligence report cast doubt on his repeated claim that American strikes had obliterated Iran's nuclear programs. Mr. Trump started using the word obliterated before he received his first battle damage report, and since then, he has closely monitored which members of administration have used the same language. The report's finding, while preliminary, was particularly damaging because it emerged from inside the Pentagon. Okay, now, that's the context, guys. So all of our show today, the first half, is about lying liars who lie. Donald Trump will lie about anything and everything to make himself look better in his own mind and to his sycophants and his mindless supporters, and for his mindful supporters who only care about cutting their own taxes and show no empathy or understanding about how people live in this country and what it means to try to share prosperity, to care about our neighbors, and to allow everyone a chance at the American dream. So anyone who supports Donald Trump and anyone who votes for Republican candidates is someone who is very dangerous, because these are people, if they still call themselves Republicans, who are fine with Donald Trump's lies, who are fine, again, this is a show about lies, who are fine with either ignoring the lies or repeating the lies. And these are people who are fine with children being, literally, we're seeing this, pulled from foster homes and put into custody. They're fine with people who have been living in this country as productive citizens being brutalized and put into overpacked, overcrowded ICE facilities without adequate plumbing or food. They're fine with torturing people by putting them in overheated, hard to locate prisons that they're building in the Everglades. So if you are a Republican and you're listening to this, or anyone else, I don't trust you. I think you are either a sadistic person who supports murderers, or you care more about your own money than other people in this country being tortured, harmed, and also brutalized and terrorized. Okay, so that is where we are. And I'm going to show you Donald Trump's lies. But again, all this comes down to, will you repeat the lies? And the minute you stop repeating the lies and you tell people to their face, I'm sorry, you're lying. You are lying. What you're saying is inaccurate. And I think you're a dangerous person, is important to do. And one more thing on this. Trumpers, a lot of Trumpers and Republicans play the victim. So they're victimized if you don't agree with them. They have a grievance and you're making fun of them, and therefore you're putting, they put you on the defensive because you're the attacker. You don't have to play into that game. It's not that you think that you think they're a deplorable or stupid or any of those names. You can say, I don't trust you. I don't feel safe around you. And I don't think anyone should feel safe around you, right? These are people, I believe, if they are Republicans right now, who are the equivalent of people in countries like back in the days of Nazi Germany, who would look the other way, as Naomi Schulman wrote, a good friend of mine, you've seen this, that, the problem isn't, people want you to be nice in the face of authoritarianism, but it was the nice people who watched their neighbors being dragged away from their homes, right? Nice. We must resist. We don't have to yell or shout, but you have to tell the truth. Every time you hear someone repeating a lie, if it's a family member, and you can say, it's not true, I don't feel safe continuing this conversation or being with you, and just remove yourself from it. Remove yourself. These folks have to be pariahs. It's not the point where you can persuade them. And if you're in a space where you don't, I'm not saying confront strangers, right? That's not what I'm talking about. However, let's now move on. What is the biggest lie Donald Trump is trying to perpetuate? There are two. There's the attack on Iran was a success. And the other lie he's trying to perpetuate is that the people that they are brutalizing in the United States, the migrants who they are trying to round up and imprison to fulfill a sadistic impulse and a racist impulse by Steve Miller and some of Donald Trump's supporters. They're doing this. This is the other lie. So I'm going to now play for you what Donald Trump had to say today at The Hague at a press conference. It is very telling. Let's play it.
The intelligence reports saying that the Iranian nuclear sites were only partially devastated, not entirely.
Yeah, well, they said it was actually, the report said it could have been they don't know. I mean, they did a report. I could have Pete talk to it because his department did the report. They really don't know. I think Israel's going to be telling us very soon because Bibi is going to have people involved in that whole situation. We hear it was obliteration. It was a virtual obliteration. When you take a look at the ground above, don't forget the flame is all underground. But everything above, if you look at the before and the after picture, everything above is burned black. The trees, everything. There's one building, but that's a building that sunk substantially into the granite, so that the fire goes right over it. I believe it was total obliteration. I believe they didn't have a chance to get anything out because we acted fast. If it would have taken 2 weeks, maybe, but it's very hard to remove that kind of material. Very hard and very dangerous for them to remove it. Plus, they knew we were coming, and if they know we're coming, they're not going to be down there.
I can't even believe how many lies I heard. This is what he is saying is in direct opposition to the intelligence report he got from inside of the Pentagon. If you can believe it, this is how stupid he thinks we are. He said, well, their report is preliminary, so it can't be accurate. Okay. If the report that his own Department of Defense gave him yesterday or the day before is too preliminary, then how could his assessment that he made immediately a day or two earlier when the bombs dropped, how could that be more accurate, right? He drops the missiles on the 3 sites on Saturday night. And then he immediately says the site Fordo was completely obliterated and completely destroyed. And then his own intelligence group, like we just heard, and it just leaked yesterday, so let's say he found out yesterday. He finds out yesterday, no, it was only significantly damaged and the nuclear program's only set back a few months. Okay. And now he's saying the report that he got yesterday is too preliminary. So that doesn't make logical sense. And then on top of it, he's literally lying. He's saying, well, what I think. Okay, now I'm not sure he thinks anything, but he's implying that there's no way, or he's saying to us, there's no way that the scientists in North Korea could have moved the material elsewhere. There's no way, he says, that they did that. His literal report that he received says that they moved the materials. Okay, so he is just lying, absolutely lying. Okay, so let's go back and look at why he was so angry last night, right? He said the sites are completely destroyed. So here's what Donald Trump does. It's the same thing he did about lying about the 2020 election, which he's still doing. I decided the bomb dropped and everything was completely obliterated. And he is going to stick to that language. And people around him are going to say things, well, he meant significant damage. Or they're going to say, well, no, it wasn't. And they didn't get underneath the ground. The bombs were only on the surface and the major amounts of nuclear material were moved. And he's going to say, no, completely obliterated. And he is going to stick to what he says over and over, despite the truth. That's how it works. And eventually, the people who continue to repeat information or frame things in a way that he doesn't like, he will tell them to shut up or he will remove them. Now, I want to add something else. When he arrived last night in the Netherlands, here's what he had to say. This morning. The day begins in the beautiful Netherlands. The king and queen are beautiful and spectacular people. Our breakfast meeting was great. Now it's off to the very important NATO meetings. The U.S. will be very well represented. Is he a 5-year-old? This man only exists on the surface. He's noting that these monarchs are good looking and where they're taking him, where he's staying at these palaces, are beautiful and spectacular. And then he goes on to the meeting to lie his, I'm trying not to use profanity, to lie his head off. How is that? Okay. So that is what is going on there. Now, I want to move, before I move to the victory last night in New York for the people over the entrenched power, people over profits, people over lies, people over pink propaganda. I want to talk about one more thing. Yesterday, at a House subcommittee, RFK Jr. was put over the coals, was raked over the coals by members of the committee who wanted to show him that he didn't know what he was talking about. The purpose of this committee meeting was to talk about the budget, and this is part of congressional oversight. It's the House Energy and Commerce Health Subcommittee. So I don't know why health is under the jurisdiction of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, but that's how it goes. And I want to show you this first clip of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez asking RFK if he knows about a major a major investigation against United Healthcare. Let's play this.
Secretary Kennedy, are you aware that President Trump's Department of Justice is reportedly investigating United Healthcare for criminal insurance fraud in some of their for-profit health insurance plans, like Medicare Advantage?
I'm not aware of that investigation.
You are not aware that the Trump Department of Justice is investigating the largest insurance company in America that
I'm not aware of.
for fraud in Medicare Advantage
No, I'm not aware of that.
that
but
you have jurisdiction over?
It doesn't surprise me.
Okay. In your submitted testimony, you said HHS takes seriously our role as responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. Are you aware that for-profit insurance corporations like United Healthcare have been found to be defrauding public dollars of more than $80 billion a year?
I'm not aware of that number, but
You're
I'm
not
aware
aware
that
of
there's
that?
fraud across the for-profit sector.
Respectfully, Secretary Kennedy, if we're making decisions around waste, fraud, and abuse, this is the largest source of waste, fraud, and abuse of public dollars in the public insurance
You
space.
say $80 million?
$80 billion a year.
80, did you say 80 million or 80 billion?
80 with a B, billion.
With a-
I just have to pause this and go, what is going on here? $80 billion of fraud. Doesn't even know about it. United Healthcare doesn't know about this major, giant insurance company. Maybe he doesn't remember Luigi Mangione, but that sure as hell should have put this insurance company on his radar. Let's continue AOC here.
Yeah. If that's the case, why did you nearly double the rate that taxpayer dollars give for-profit insurance companies like United next year if you don't know those things?
Double the rate? How did I do that?
So your agency nearly doubled the taxpayer dollars that for-profit insurance corporations like United will be paid next year, meaning these companies, the largest of whom is under investigation, criminal investigation by the Trump administration, will be receiving an additional $25 billion from your agency.
How is that happening?
I would be happy to submit to the congressional record evidence of this.
I mean, it's hard for me to even describe to you how offensive it is that RFK Jr. has the role that he has. How could he be Secretary of Health and Human Services when he is a vaccine denier? How could he maintain this job right now when he doesn't know what's going on at the agency? Every day, why isn't there a call for his resignation? None of this is normal. It's a combination of lies and being completely in the dark and incurious about what's happening at your agency. Now, another piece of this hearing comes up now. Now, this is when RFK is confronted by a member of the committee because of cuts that his department, that the budget will make, cuts that are overseen by his department related to funding to help people get over, or I guess you don't get over your addiction, to become sober, people who are addicts to no longer be in the throes of addiction. We're talking about really important health care in this country. Let's hear what RFK has to say with this.
Ask you this, Mr. Secretary. You've credited the 12 steps in your recovery. So can you tell this committee what is step 4?
It's making a fearless inventory.
Is making a fearless inventory of ourselves.
Yeah.
And you remember that one. And do you remember step 12?
Yeah, it's having had a spiritual awakening, we try to help other alcoholics and addicts.
So tell me, Mr. Secretary, yes or no, does cutting off treatment for people still suffering align with step 4 and step 12?
We're not cutting off treatment for anybody, Congressman. As I said, I'm happy to explain it, but you don't give me any chance to answer questions, which is part of the game that we play here.
Mr. Secretary, I've heard your story. Again, I think that it's great that you talked about your recovery. But, man, you can't pull the ladder and shut the door. There are people like President Trump's family and your family that have resources, but there are families like mine and Secretary Vance's.
Gentleman's time has expired.
As we said, we're not denying.
Time has
We're not
expired.
taking treatment away.
So they're going to say they're not taking treatment away from people, but they are lying. He doesn't either care to know what's going on, doesn't understand what's going on in the budget, or is outright lying. This is how this game is played. Okay. So this is, as far as I'm concerned, a war on the domestic front. The new news is that we're not just talking about like 13 million people kicked off Medicare. We're now hearing that the way this budget will work, as right now designed, would also kick around 13 million additional people off of Obamacare affordable care plans. Okay? And we haven't even begun to talk about what's going to happen to Medicaid. I mean, we talked about it a few weeks ago about the knock-on effects. But this budget is a moving target, and who is being targeted? The American people. It's terrible. So one more piece of this lie. Clearly, you can't talk about this if you don't note that Speaker of the House Mike Johnson seems to have no qualms about the pink propaganda. Let's play it.
Look, you got a number of provisions. We want to make sure that we hold by our commitment that we are not cutting Medicaid. The President has said that, and I've said that. We've all said that. We are strengthening the program for the people who are the most vulnerable populations who really rely upon that. You're talking about the disabled, the elderly, young pregnant women, for example. Those resources won't be available for those people who desperately need it and deserve it if young able-bodied men, for example, are on the program and not working. So we introduced a work requirement on the House side. It's wildly popular with the people because it follows common sense. If you're going to be on the public wagon and you're able, you should try to help pull it. And all we did was put in there, as you all know, a 20-hour work requirement per week, 20 hours. You guys work 80 hours, I'm sure, right? Give me a break. And they're complaining about that. You either have to be working, you have to be looking for a job in a job training program, or volunteering in your community. For heaven's sakes, do something constructive. That is...
So once again, he is mischaracterizing what's going on. They're acting as if merely requiring documentation for people working is going to solve their plan to slash this budget. And we have looked at the numbers before, and he is outright lying about this, right? I mean, it is outrageous. And, you know, I don't know what more to say to you. I can show you that pie chart again, that little donut chart, but you know, when you have seen it before, that they're trying to scapegoat a very small number of people who are getting this, Medicaid, and they're trying to act as if it's a huge, vast, larger part of the population, when we have seen that the numbers are definitive. It was from KFF that we were looking at, and that the numbers are definitive about who is getting Medicaid Advantage, and that what they're doing here is trying to make us believe that somehow there are these able-bodied men out there who are just essentially milking the system. I'm going to share with you that chart again in case you're a new viewer and you haven't seen it. And I'm going to drop that link right in to the chat right now. I think it's really important. I could just say he's lying. You might say I'm lying. So I want to share that with you again right now. This is important. Okay. Here is the website KFF, the independent source for health policy research and polling news. This is the donut chart that we have looked at before. And I'm accepting cookies here. Okay. So this is figure 1, work status and barriers to work among Medicaid adults. This is from 2023. We're talking about the people who are on Medicaid, the Medicaid expansion, and this is a Medicaid. There's a name that that Charles Gaba gave to it, but this is the expansion of Medicaid, and this is work status and barriers to working again among Medicaid adults. Now, what is this? This chart only covers the 26.1 million people who are between the ages of 19 and 64, who are they're not on Social Security disability. They're not getting supplemental security income, right? So they have not registered with the government as being disabled. 44% of them are working full-time. 20% are working part-time right now. Okay, full-time is based on 35 hours a week. So 20% are working part-time. 12% are caregivers. So they, for children or their elderly parents or someone else, so they cannot work. That gets us to, what is that? 86% or 76%, I'm sorry. And then you get 10 more percent who actually have an illness or disability. Now we're at 84. Then we have 7% who are not working because they're in school, right? We're at 92% now. Only 8% of the people who are in that sort of adult population who in theory could work, that's between 19 and 64, only 8% are not working because they have either retired, they can't find a job, or some other reason. Only 8%. So I know that you might be thinking, well, Jen, if it's only 8%, why don't we make that 8% show up, file paperwork to show that they literally can't find work, or that they, that they have a legitimate reason for why they're not working. Okay. And the answer is making or requiring that paperwork affects the other 92%. It's a trap. It's a trap because if you're one of those people who's working full time, you're going to have to be providing regular paperwork. Let's say you're a waiter or a waitress, or you're a home health care aide, and you have a part-time job. And if you have a job waiting tables, let's say the restaurant shuts down and you're about to get another one, you're having to update when you're working, when you're not working. If you make a mistake on the paperwork, or you don't fill it out or submit it, or they lose it, then they'll kick you off your health insurance and then try to get your insurance back. So this whole thing, insurance, by that, I mean your Medicaid, because remember, the jobs that you have don't often give you insurance. We're talking about people whose employment, if they're working 35 hours a week, or in this case, they're saying 20 hours a week. So we're talking about not that 8%, because even among that 8%, there are people in there who can't find jobs, or who are not capable of being employed. There could be reasons around mental health, and they just haven't registered to be part of other programs. They could have other intellectual disabilities. And again, we just don't know the reasons why someone might not be working in there, but whatever they're trying to do to squeeze, they claim just of that 8%, let's say 4% of them are just people who are sitting around, could get out and get a job, and want to be on the dole, is what they're saying. And they should be pulling the wagon. What they're really doing is those people will probably figure out, if they're so able-bodied and capable, probably how to fill out the paperwork and claim that they're calling in and can't find a job, right? They'll fill out that paperwork. We won't save money on those people. We won't get those people who are, milking the system. They're going to figure out a way to fill out their paperwork on time. It's going to, the 92% who are doing the right thing, who don't have insurance coverage through their work, who are going to be caught in this web of red tape. The same people who are against red tape when it comes to businesses operating are fine with creating red tape and hoops to jump through that will not actually get the culprits or the cheats, but will actually hurt ordinary people. So That's a complicated way of saying they're lying. Now, you might say, well, maybe, they're not really lying. Hello, these are the people who will lie in our face about whether a bunker has been obliterated. These are people who will lie in our face. The same people who are telling us that they're not cutting Medicaid or Medicare are the same people who still say that Donald Trump won the 2020 election. These are the same people who said that the folks who were violently attacking the US Capitol didn't do it, that they were just tourists. So who are you going to believe? The data, the people who are presenting this information to you logically, or the ones who will lie in our face? Enough of the propaganda. Now we are going to switch to something fabulous, and that is in New York, the victory for Zohran Mamdani. This is something, again, I spoke about yesterday, and it's a victory for him. It's a victory for the voters in New York City. This is a victory for ranked choice voting, which I'm now enamored of. And I now found out there's a group that was established in Michigan for ranked choice voting. I'm now following them on Blue Sky. I've signed up for information. We should all get ranked choice voting. More on that later. I'm going to get an expert on ranked choice voting on the show so they can push that for you. But I'm going to tell you why this is a victory. First of all, so let me just back up a little bit. There has been an effort to smear Zohran Mamdani and claim he is anti-Semitic. There could be nothing farther from the truth. I'm disgusted by these efforts. Let me add to this. Let me just say the positive stuff first. Here is what he had to say early this morning. In the words of Nelson Mandela, it always seems impossible until it's done. My friends, it is done. And you are the ones who did it. I am honored to be your Democratic nominee for the mayor of New York. Now, Fox News is flipping the F out. Let me read to you someone's post from Blue Sky. This is an image MAGA is posting to stoke fear about Mamdani, a list of things that sound awesome. So here's what Fox News said about his platform. Housing. He wants to, one, freeze the rent. So some rent-controlled apartments that are already rent-controlled, he wants to freeze the rent in those. Also, he wants to build affordable housing. What about affordability? He wants to have some city-owned grocery stores, a public option for more affordable food. And he wants fares to be free on public buses. This is something that had been tried before, and it was really, guys, it was really successful. We're talking about the people who take the bus and the subways. I'm someone who did that in New York, but a lot of people who are the more wealthy people who are Cuomo supporters don't know what that's like. They don't know what it's like to work minimum wage and how much transportation eats into your budget. I don't think there ever have been in a situation like I was at one time where I literally couldn't afford to get on the subway. I didn't have enough money to do that. And I had to walk. I think I told you guys this. I had to walk to a pawn shop to sell a ring of mine. So I had enough money for transportation until I got my first paycheck. This was me in New York. And I was at that time a graduate of Harvard Law School. I don't know that a lot of people have experienced that. And so having free buses or having free transit generally, but just free buses alone means if you're trying to get to your job, you don't need to dig up that extra money. You don't need to choose between eating and transportation. It's a catch-22. If you can't get to your job, you can't get paid, right? It's expensive. Every time you get on a bus and then get back on one, unless you have a transfer, which is not all the time, you go to work, it's a fare. You come back, it's another fare, right? So this is great. It's not bad. What else was on here of the scary things? LGBTQIA protections. He is for extending and protecting gender affirming care citywide. That's amazing. I think that's great. Making New York City an LGBTQIA sanctuary city. I think that's amazing. As different states in this country attack people who are LGBTQIA, it's good that New York attracts more. This will attract intelligence. It will attract the arts community. It will attract more people as a safe space. Labor, he wants to raise the minimum wage to $30 by 2030. That seems reasonable. If you look at the numbers, the minimum wage, the federal minimum wage hasn't raised in decades, and a minimum wage of $30 would make a hell of a lot of sense. Okay, Trump proofing New York City. He wants to end New York City's cooperation with ICE. Okay, so this is what they think is bad. These are his platforms. Now, I need to add one more thing. There is, as I've mentioned, a smear campaign among some people who I used to respect, claiming that he is an anti-Semite because of his support for Palestinian rights. And I fully disagree based on what I heard. And I have literally, and I just want to say this really clearly, no pink propaganda, no propaganda coming from any direction. I left a Signal chat because I was tired of the lies that I was shocked that people were spewing to justify their support for Cuomo. So, let's look at this. Now, Akiva Cohen, who is a self-avowed Zionist, he says, Zohran Mamdani is very much not an anti-Semite, signed your very, very Zionist and Jewish friend. He said that in response to former conservative neocon David Frum, who said last night, well, at least we can retire that faded and false line, anti-Semitism has no place in New York City. This is propaganda, and my friends, it is going to step up because normally the Democratic nominee will secure the win in the general election, which is obviously this November. I think it's November 5th. However, there is an effort afoot by the Democratic establishment to try to support maybe an independent candidate. Curtis Sliwa is somehow running. He's now running as the Republican. He was part of that Guardian Angels kind of vigilante police group. Curtis Sliwa, he is running, as I said, the Republican ticket. We still have Eric Adams running as an independent. Last night when Cuomo conceded, and I'll explain that to you, why he did, even though it's ranked choice voting. He conceded because although Mamdani didn't have over 50% of the vote, he did have more than Cuomo. And if you look at the way the numbers came out, there's no way Cuomo will survive this. I mean, the official tally will happen next Tuesday, but Cuomo conceded knowing he'd been defeated. Okay, so there's going to be an ugly, brutal battle coming up. So we will watch that, but there's more. In response to what Akiva said, folks were saying, have you written, this is Pope Hat, who goes by various different names, Ken White, an attorney, said to Akiva Cohen, have you written at any length about this? I would be interested in your refutation of this particular attack. And he said, only in the one particular, but when he has a trial, he said, when that's over, I'll get to this, let me know in a month. Okay, so now I want to share with you, because we talked about this yesterday, why Cuomo ended up conceding. You can see when I think this is over 90% of the vote. This is like 93% of the vote was in here last night or in the early morning. Zohran Mamdani had 43.5% and Cuomo had just 36.4%. What's significant here, remember, is Mamdani just needs to get to over 50%. Well, the third person is Brad Lander. Brad got 11.3%. Remember how we talked about how Lander and Mamdani cross-endorsed? So what this tells you is 11% of the people, 112,000 people, chose Lander as their first choice. Most likely, over half of them chose Mamdani as their second. If they did, he gets over the line. Okay. And then you look at all the other folks. These are, some people Scott Stringer, some people Zelmar Myrie, all these other folks. If you do the math, you can see that there's no way Cuomo will win. And you can just sort of look at this right now. Okay. Even if, a little over half of the Landers voted for Mamdani, there's no way Cuomo can squeak it out, or from the other numbers. That is why I wrote this last night, and I want to share this with you. So this got kind of went viral. It was a little weird. Over 1.6 thousand people had reshared it on Blue Sky. And here's what I said last night or early this morning. Wake up, Democratic Party, old guard establishment. This isn't about New York City. This is the way the wind is blowing. Step aside for young people who this country will need over the next several decades, long after you are gone. Enough with your egos and the big money interests. This is not ageism. I am talking, when I say Democratic Party old guard establishment, I'm talking about even younger people who are supporting that system. And when I talk about young people, yes, I am talking about people who will be alive and have, sort of like when you nominate young people to the U.S. Supreme Court. We need to lift up and support those who are emerging as leaders, who are like Mandami in his early 30s, because he will be alive for half a century more at least. That is 50 years. And when he has enough experience and wisdom, he can pass the baton. Let me give you an example. Brad Lander, people are like, oh, he should run now as an independent. No. People are saying he might be, the idea is for him to be the lieutenant mayor. He's got experience being the controller. He knows how the city works and can get things done. He's going to pair himself with a young leader who can attract young people back into the party. I feel this strongly. Does this mean that I don't think people like who are my age in their 50s or people who are in their 60s or 70s should be in office? I'm not saying that. I'm talking about a mentality, but I'm also saying that representation matters. The Democratic Party has always said that representation matters. That's why we believe in diversity. Well, our party is not diverse at the top. We have people like Chuck Schumer holding on to their own power and not creating the proper succession plans for the next team to move up and move forward. It is time. I think that's where we should be. And that is why I think that sentiment went viral. Now, another thing. Again, on the anti-Semitic smears, you're going to keep hearing. This is someone who worked closely with Lander's campaign, Morris Katz. We'll have a lot more to say, but hard to tell the story of the election day results without Brad Lander, who went all out in the closing 10 days defending Zohran, spending nearly $500,000 attacking Cuomo and building momentum that could not be overcome. I want to make it clear. It was an alliance of a Jewish man, a Muslim man, and also a Black woman. Tish James was out there also campaigning for Zohran Mandami. And we had Jim Clyburn, who is not even from New York, from South Carolina, coming out and supporting Cuomo at the last minute. We had Bill Clinton. We already spoke yesterday about why it's disgusting that anyone was supporting Cuomo after the repeated, credible allegations of sexual misconduct harassing young women in the workplace. He resigned because of that. Now he says he regrets resigning. There are other problems about Cuomo. There are other problems about his leadership as well. But I'm just pointing that out there. And so this should be a wake-up call to the establishment. Now, there is more. This is David Dayan. He is the editor of the American Prospect and, a lefty kind of magazine. I should say he's the executive editor, to be clear. He's the top dog. And he says, people immediately pivoting to slot Lander into a progressive primary challenge are missing the implicit deal. I think he's a progressive primary challenge. What they're saying is to have him, I think, be in the general, even though he's saying primary, right? So I think this is what he means. So are missing the implicit deal in the cross endorsement. He's going to be deputy mayor. I called it lieutenant mayor, but deputy mayor is the official name, essentially COO of New York City. He's going to use his experience with the inner workings of government to help Mamdani deliver. I think what they're saying is that I think what Diane is saying is essentially there are people who want to hold a progressive primary and have Lander be the progressive candidate, right? Not as far to the left as the Democratic Socialist candidate. He ain't going to do that. That's not what solidarity is. This is a beautiful story about a coalition coming together with concern for the people and putting their egos aside. And I don't mean entirely aside, but I mean, they are saying, you know what, let's team up together. Let's be a team. So I am very jazzed up about ranked choice voting. Now, that is what is good. Now I have got some crazy town for you. Let's go. Ay, my crazy town.
A lot of presidents have wanted NATO members to spend more on defense. The big headline coming out of this summit is that the NATO countries have agreed to raise their defense spending to 5% of their GDP. You know, the president has had a tenuous relationship with NATO, with the EU as well. What do you think this new commitment from NATO will do to the relationship? What kind of impact will it have? Will it strengthen?
It should strengthen it. I mean, I would call this the Trump summit because this really tracks back, I believe, to 2018 in the first administration.
You've got his branding knack now.
Well, I do. Okay. Well, yeah, I guess it gets catchy because the reason why is because in 2018, I believe it was at his first summit, maybe it was 2017, but a while back, in his first administration, he challenged NATO. He had a chart and he brought out and he said, look at these countries, do a 0.9% of your spending on GDP. He embarrassed a bunch of countries. And it set in motion a series of events that pressured our European partners to spend more on defense. I get it.
The Trump summit? No. He is showing up with his tail between his legs and his lies spewing out of his mouth. And I promise you, he will not get the reception that he thinks he deserves because this man is a dangerous, sadistic, racist, sexist narcissist. And it doesn't get better from here. It's time that we call out the lies. It's enough of the pink propaganda. When people spew propaganda, you need to say, that's not true. And I don't feel safe around someone who is willing to lie to support a person, either in the case of Cuomo, who is a serial sex offender and did a terrible job with COVID and covered up deaths in nursing homes. Or when it comes to Trump, someone who says they're a Republican, anyone who supports Donald Trump, you should not feel safe around because they'll lie to you, they'll support lies, and they will look the other way when our neighbors are being dragged out of their homes, when nannies are being dragged out of playgrounds, when someone who is at work doing his job, they'll lie and say that they assaulted someone and they'll be dragged away. And these people are fine with it. This is full-blown fascism in the United States. And this dictatorship only survives because people continue to rationalize and support the lies. And the best thing that we saw last night is people power, people against the machine, people against the lies. One last thing on this. I was on the phone with a friend who I hadn't talked to in a long time, a couple of days ago. And he asked me, so is it just the courts that are going to save us? And I said, no, it's the people. And I was referring in part to the protests that had taken place, the No Kings protests. And he kind of blew that off a little bit, saying, well, yeah, those are just protests in the streets. What can they do? The vote yesterday in New York was the equivalent of protests in the streets. No matter how much money or how many lies that people spew, with the right candidates running for office, the people will win. And we will get rid of more Republicans. We will get rid of the recalcitrant Democratic machine who isn't doing anything to stop Donald Trump. The people in New York, like Chuck Schumer and Kristen Gillibrand, who voted for that crypto bill, the so-called Genius Act, that is so corrupt and is only because they were paid off, essentially, right? Not a literal bribing, but they were given chunks of money by the crypto establishment. They passed that even after Donald Trump unlawfully bombed Iran, even after Donald Trump put troops in the street. And what's more, Gillibrand was supporting Cuomo. Gillibrand, who ruined the career of the congressman, Al Franken. And she was one of these people who stepped up and said, yeah, that wasn't appropriate behavior that he engaged in. And so he should step down, or we're going to do an investigation. And Al Franken stepped down. And now she had the audacity to support Andrew Cuomo. Her career should be over. So, I'm just saying the only way we get through this is not to capitulate and to be mealy-mouthed and to say, well, if we're just sort of quiet, all we need to do is to have a D in that seat. No, we need to energize the public. We will turn out voters, and we can crush the Republican Party, the party of Trump, the party of lawlessness, the party of racism, sexism, and homophobia. We can do it. And we can also empower the public, because we are living, again, in an authoritarian fascist kleptocracy. And we don't get out of this through just sitting back and hoping the Democratic Party establishment does better for us. Some of those people, obviously, vote for the Democrat on the ticket when you get to the general. But in the primaries, fight like hell to get the leaders we want. Okay, I love you guys. Have a great Wednesday, and I will see you in the morning.
Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub Show, where welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub Show. Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub Show, where welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub Show.